Kelly, starting today my parents are moving in with us. Get ready, will you? Moving in without a single discussion? Ken, what are you thinking? There's no need to discuss it. You're just my housekeeper, so if you don't like it, you can leave. By the way, my mom agrees with me. Kelly, let me be clear. We don't need a daughter-in-law who leeches off my son. If you can't obey, you really need to leave. As soon as we bought the new 5-bedroom house, Ken said he was going to have his parents move in. Like I said earlier, there was no discussion about them moving in. In fact, Ken decided on his own to buy the new house. It's just unbelievable. Since my father-in-law isn't here today for reasons, Ken and his mother didn't back down. I calmly responded to them both. Okay, I get it. Then let's get divorced today. My name is already signed, so please write yours quickly. I slowly took out the divorce papers from my bag and thrust them at Ken. As expected, Ken and his mother were stunned, but then they started laughing. What's the matter with you? You're unusually assertive. Talking about divorce like it's a joke, you've finally learned how to speak up. It's really funny. Like you could ever get a divorce. Laughing loudly, Ken and his mother didn't realize that. They knew nothing and understood nothing. I'll make sure they're not laughing for long. I quickly pulled out a piece of paper from the drawer and thrust it at his mother. She took the suddenly offered paper with confusion, and her confusion deepened when she saw the contents. It was an IOU for $1 million addressed to Ken. What does this mean? Not understanding, his mother fluttered the IOU and asked Ken. Instead of my speechless husband, I answered. As you can see, it's an IOU. Before we get divorced, I want the $1 million that I loaned to Ken returned. Then, his mother started laughing mockingly. Are you out of your mind? There's no way Ken would have debts, right? Unlike a jobless housewife like you, my son is a CEO. She thinks my husband is a business owner. I just laughed to myself in disbelief. It seems I need to teach her who really is crazy here, assuming and insulting without knowing anything. The $1 million I loaned to Ken was because he asked. I need it to start a company. Please lend it to me. What do you mean, Ken? You borrowed from your wife to start a company? You said you had plenty of investors who supported you and that you had savings. His mother asked him, but Ken turned his face away from her with a grim expression. His face said, "Don't say anything unnecessary," but I continued regardless. Ken hasn't established any company. That can't be true. Ken bought this house for us to live together because his company was doing well and he could afford it. No way he could buy a 5-bedroom house without a loan if he weren't a CEO. Are you trying to escape living with us with this fake IOU? As she said this, his mother tore up the IOU and smirked as if she had one, but it was all expected, so I laughed to myself again. That's a copy, so I don't mind if you destroy it. I have the original stored separately. Since $1 million is quite a large amount, I made sure the IOU was legally solid, witnessed by a lawyer. If you think it's a lie, go ahead and check with the lawyer. Bringing up a lawyer, what an elaborate lie. Ken goes to the office every morning. I've even seen his business card. There's no way he would borrow $1 million from his wife. His mother clearly didn't believe in the debt and seemed to be ignoring my words. She'll regret it later, the fool. Then I got to the heart of the matter. The $1 million wasn't for starting a company. Ken deceived me and bought the new house on his own. What? The new house we were supposed to live in? At my words, his mother faltered for a moment but still looked skeptical and impatiently questioned my silent husband. Ken, are you going to let your wife say whatever she wants forever? Then my husband picked up a piece of the torn IOU, casually spoke up, and admitted. Kelly's right. I borrowed $1 million. His mother stood up from her chair, bewildered by my husband's calm demeanor. So, are you saying that the IOU from earlier was real? You really borrowed $1 million from this wife of yours? What choice did I have? She said she wouldn't lend me the money without an IOU. What do you mean? Explain yourself. His mother, not seeing any panic in her son's defiant demeanor, started to show her anxiety with a burst of anger. What's there to explain? There's an IOU, and I've admitted it. Isn't that enough? It's not okay. How on earth does a full-time housewife like Kelly have $1 million? That's just bizarre. How did you get that money? You didn't, did you? Being dismissed by her son, his mother then turned her angry gaze toward me as if I were a criminal. I almost laughed at her outrageous thinking but held it back and enlightened her. You might not know this, but before I married Ken, I started a company with some friends. Thanks to that, the business took off and is doing really well. Yes, it was not Ken who became a president of a company, it was me. Among my friends from my single days, some had graduated from business school. With these friends, I founded the company with joint investments. So, it turns out that Ken is the one leeching off someone else. Throwing back the same accusation she had thrown at me earlier, his mother's lips trembled. Ken, as if it was someone else's problem, continued to look at his smartphone nonchalantly. Kelly never mentioned such a thing when married. So, you've been deceiving us, huh? I did tell Ken before we married. He should have known, didn't you ask him? Ken, is that true? Why wouldn't you tell me something so important? His mother looked back and forth between me and my husband with a puzzled expression. In stark contrast, Ken, still looking at his smartphone, answered nonchalantly. I thought it might lead to complications later. Besides, Mom never asked me that deeply. And it's not just my fault, since Kelly had been hiding it all along too. Startled by his words, his mother fixed her gaze on me and spat out bitterly. That's right, it's not just Ken's fault. Hiding it all this time, how sneaky. Whether it's sneaky or not, you always said you were too busy to listen when I wanted to talk, didn't you? Whenever I tried to speak, you never really listened, just threw unpleasant snide remarks instead. That was just me offering some tough love because you're lacking as a daughter-in-law. It sounds terrible. Just like Ken said, you, the daughter-in-law, should have reported it properly with your own mouth. Don't blame Ken alone, please. That's how his mother always treated me, looking down on me. Before anything else, my mother-in-law sees a daughter-in-law as someone beneath her. Not just in words, she frequently came over to criticize and nag about the housework. How I hung the laundry or cleaned the house, and especially the meals. I never got her approval for any meal I prepared. At worst, she would even throw away the food I made. When I protested, she would say, it's because Kelly can't cook properly. Don't make such strange, awful-looking food. It's a joke to let my dear Ken eat such things. I even complained to my husband about it, but he would naturally take his mother's side, so in the end, I was the one getting blamed by both my husband and his mother. My husband always prioritized his mother over me, so much so that I thought he might be a mama's boy. His mother, for her part, doted on him excessively and was always on his side. Fed up with these two, I stopped playing the obedient role and got to where I am now. Now that Ken and I are no longer a couple, and you and I are practically strangers, things like the order in which I report my business or whatever don't matter anymore, right? More importantly, I'd like to settle the debt cleanly before we divorce, so please take care of it soon. With a firm stance, I confronted her, and she immediately began to panic, shaking Ken's shoulder and asking, Hey, Ken, Kelly seems serious. What are we going to do about the $1 million? It's okay, Mom. I have a way to pay back the $1 million. So, no need to worry. Ken still hadn't taken his eyes off his smartphone and responded nonchalantly. A sum like $1 million isn't easy to repay, and his mother's panic only escalated. Ken, you can only be so calm for now. You know nothing. But I know everything. Preparing my next move, I slowly began to speak. Oh, by the way. I'll also be charging an additional $60,000. Immediately after, Ken finally looked up from his smartphone at me. with a bewildered expression. $60,000? I don't remember being charged for that. Really? You don't remember? Of course not. What are you trying to pull in all this confusion? My husband, thinking I know nothing, and his mother, blindly taking his side. To make them understand their situation, I decided to call someone. Then, the doorbell rang, and he showed up. Sorry for changing your plans on such short notice. I appreciate it. As I greeted him, a familiar man appeared in front of my husband, who had been disinterestedly looking at his smartphone again, and my mother-in-law, who was confused and just watching the situation unfold. You. Why are you here? You said you couldn't come today. The first to speak up was my mother-in-law. The person I had called was my father-in-law. He was supposed to visit the new house tomorrow because he was busy today. Even my husband was surprised by the unexpected appearance of his father. Sorry I'm late. Saying that, my father-in-law quickly pulled out a piece of paper and thrust it at my husband. My husband looked down at the paper. I won't let you say you don't know about this. With my father-in-law acting out of character, tension spread to both my husband and mother-in-law. The document my father-in-law had brought was a bill for $60,000 in damages. Dad, what's this all about? I don't recall being asked to pay any alimony. My husband truly seemed to have no idea, which absolutely astounded me. Thinking he wouldn't get caught, or thinking it's fine if only I knew either way, it's unforgivable. And my mother-in-law, who was angrily asking, why would Ken have to pay alimony, needed to be told what her son was up to. You're a fair partner, Rachel, right? As I said that, my husband's complexion visibly changed. He hadn't thought I knew about his affair, so he was at a loss for words when I suddenly mentioned the name of his affair partner. I've never heard that name before. Clearly unable to hide his disturbance, he still tried to feign ignorance. But it was my mother-in-law who pressed the issue. Ken, are you having an affair? Who is Rachel? Rachel is Ken's affair partner. Be quiet. I wasn't asking you. I was asking Ken. Well, then I will speak to Ken too, so please, mother-in-law, keep quiet. Ken, I've already consulted a lawyer, so make sure you pay the alimony properly. Don't make up nonsense. You're just using some woman's name to threaten me. You were the one who clearly started acting suspiciously after I gave you the $1 million, weren't you? Did you really think I wouldn't notice anything after you made it so obvious that you were cheating on me? Ken left so much evidence of his affair it was as if he wasn't trying to hide it. Even I, who can be oblivious, noticed the changes in Ken and didn't struggle to gather evidence. Claiming late nights at the office due to business setup, the nights he didn't come home at all, and when he did, he reeked of perfume and makeup that wasn't mine. Checking his jacket pockets or wallet while he was in the bath, I could outline his activities for the day just from receipts, from fancy restaurants and designer shops to hotels. There were often purchases of women's designer items on his card that I didn't recognize, and he left his smartphone lying around, so I could easily see its contents. Either he was confident I wouldn't find out, or he thought it was okay if I did, but either way, it felt awful. After being so obvious about it, why did you think I hadn't noticed? That's just your speculation. You're delusional, involving my father in this nonsense, are you crazy? The crazy one is you, thinking your affair hadn't been noticed. You keep insisting I'm having an affair, but it's all your delusion and imagination, right? Don't drag mom and dad into this without any proof. As expected, Ken denied having an affair. That's when my father-in-law couldn't wait to say, if you want proof, I have plenty here. This is an investigation report from a detective. My father-in-law pulled out the report to show it. Seeing this, my mother-in-law, who had fully believed in Ken, changed her color. When did this happen? Kelly consulted me about it. I asked a detective I know. My father-in-law informed us of the facts while looking at me. As Ken and my mother-in-law were confused, I began to explain to the two of them. While Ken was in the bath, I took photos of everything on his smartphone, and I put a GPS on his car. After gathering as much evidence as I could on my own, I hesitated but decided to consult my father-in-law. Consulting my mother-in-law wouldn't have worked. She would always side with Ken and wouldn't believe a word I said. No, she never really listened to me in the first place. My father-in-law was the only one who truly listened when my mother-in-law made sarcastic comments and my husband wouldn't defend me. He was the one who reprimanded my mother-in-law for her unreasonable remarks and scolded my husband for his inability to distance himself from his parents. In this house, he was the only one I could rely on. When I showed him the evidence of my husband's affair, he immediately contacted a detective he knew and arranged for an infidelity investigation. The stage was set to corner my husband. When my mother-in-law learned there was solid evidence, she couldn't help but confront my husband. Ken, are you okay? Are you really not having an affair? Even you don't believe me, Mom? No, I believe in you, Ken. I'm always on your side. So the other woman, Rachel, she's a CEO's daughter, right? Ken, you were trying to get her to pay the $1 million, weren't you? That's why you could say confidently, I have a way to pay back the $1 million, right? I don't know any woman like that. I've found collaborators for starting my business. It was delayed, but everything's ready now. Once the business takes off, I can easily pay back $1 million. Ken continued his strained excuses, refusing to admit anything. But of course, I'm not making this up based on imagination. Why not drop the painful lies? I've met your affair partner, Rachel. I heard it straight from her. That's nonsense. You're just saying random things to frame me, aren't you? Of course, it's not nonsense. Rachel, Ken's affair partner, didn't know he was married and intended to marry him. She was deceived by Ken, but once she found out, she agreed to fully cooperate with me. Your affair partner, Rachel, she's actually a friend of mine. What? Ken gasped at my words. You're not making that up just to trap me, are you? Why would I? If you doubt me, I can call Rachel right now. As I reached for my smartphone, Ken stopped me, saying, Enough, I get it. Rachel has been a friend since high school and was one of the people I started a business with. Rachel, also a CEO's daughter and a graduate from a college's economics major, contributed greatly to our company's success with her knowledge. Even now, you still won't admit it? I never imagined Kelly and Rachel were friends. Finally resigning himself, Ken was at a loss for words. Exasperated by my husband who always made excuses despite his ignorance, both I and my father-in-law were utterly disappointed. Yet my mother-in-law, unable to give up, snapped at me. It's not Ken's fault. It's Kelly. A CEO who deceives by hiding the truth is the real problem here. You spoil him too much, that's why Ken turned out this way. Witnessing the scene, my father-in-law finally snapped, a rare occurrence for him. Ken and my mother-in-law flinched at his anger and fell silent. Ken too. A grown man, engaging in such foolishness, and instead of showing remorse, he blames Kelly. It's disgraceful. Remember, you must take responsibility for your actions. You must pay back the $1.06 million, no excuses. I was wrong. I truly regret it. I apologize. Intimidated by my father-in-law's fury, Ken immediately knelt down and apologized. Attempting to shield her son, my mother-in-law also sat down next to him and repeatedly bowed her head towards my father-in-law, pleading, Please forgive Ken. Ken, why would you cheat? Kelly has been nothing but devoted to you. How could you betray her like that? While kneeling, my father-in-law bellowed at Ken. Amidst the palpable anger in the air, Ken fearfully began to speak in bits and pieces. Mom said, a daughter-in-law who can't bear heirs is useless. That's why. Though I thought I had no more attachment to him, his words still pained my heart. In reality, I'm infertile. We had discussed and come to terms with the fact that we couldn't have children when we got married. Why bring that up now? Mom said she still wants to see grandchildren. Well, it's normal for a wife to bear children, isn't it? Since Kelly can't fulfill her duty as a wife, it's understandable she'd be cheated on. My mother-in-law said, still fearful but with an air of inevitability. Ken, nodding slightly, agreed with my mother-in-law's words. Yeah, she can't have kids, so what can you do? I thought Mom would be happy if I divorced you and found a new wife. I planned various things to make you want to leave, like asking for $1 million thinking you'd be in trouble since you're just a housewife without any money. Then, I was shocked when it turned out you actually had the money. Listening to my husband's absurd reasoning almost made me dizzy. Perhaps heavily influenced by his mother, I never thought he could be this kind of man. Before we got married, he seemed truly kind and understanding about the infertility, and I thought I could build a happy home with him. That modest dream of mine was completely shattered. Regretting that I couldn't see his true nature earlier is painful. But perhaps waking up to it early is a silver lining. With that thought, I endured their heartless words. Since I borrowed $1 million anyway, I decided to buy a house for Mom and me to live in. I thought it would make Kelly uncomfortable enough to leave. The plan was working until halfway through. So what? You bought this house just to spite me? You're stubborn. Even though you don't get along with Mom, you weren't quick to ask for a divorce. You and your mother, as my family, are the worst humans possible. Harassing Kelly just to drive her out. And justifying your affair with such terrible reasons, you two are out of your minds. Kelly, I'm truly sorry. My father-in-law apologized to me in a restrained voice after quietly listening. Please, you have always been on my side, and I am grateful for that. Your help has been invaluable this time as well. Then my father-in-law turned to my husband and his mother, his voice tinged with anger. You're not right in thinking that it's natural for a wife to have a child, are you? This is what happens when you keep meddling in the affairs of your son and his wife, and you can't keep your children apart. My mother-in-law shrank under his strong rebuke. Yet she continued to mutter, you wouldn't like it either, not seeing your grandkids, right? Ignoring her, my father-in-law sternly scolded my husband. When there's a problem, spouses should support each other. Ken, you should be thinking of Kelly first. And stop relying on your mother for everything. Then Ken looked up and retorted to his father, Mom was just thinking of me. Even in such a situation, as my husband tried to defend his mother, my father-in-law handed a document to her. What's this? My mother-in-law gasped at the divorce papers he presented. I've also decided I can't support you as a spouse anymore. My name is already filled in. Shockingly, my mother-in-law was also having an affair. The detective my father-in-law introduced me to was originally hired by him to investigate his wife's infidelity. My mother-in-law has been reckless with money since her youth, often causing fights with my father-in-law. Even after they were married, her spending habits didn't settle down, and she frequently pestered my father-in-law for money. Despite her desire for money, she never attempted to work, not even taking a part-time job. While she treated me like a parasite, it was actually my mother-in-law who was leeching off my father-in-law. She even secretly took out loans using credit cards, and since then, my father-in-law only gave her the bare minimum for living expenses. With no discretionary funds, my mother-in-law conceived a plan to commit infidelity for money. She searched on social media for wealthy men and started affairs with the intention of having them support her financially. This is because you wouldn't give me money. I had no choice. Beside her, my husband, shocked, said, I can't believe Mom was having an affair. I thought to myself, they are truly like mother, like son. It's absurd to stress or endure for such people. I'm done with you both. You two can do as you please together. Wait, if you leave me, I'll be in trouble. Ken doesn't have a job either. My mother-in-law desperately tried to cling to my father-in-law. If her dependable son was unemployed and my father-in-law abandoned her, she wouldn't be able to survive. That's no longer my concern. I will make sure you pay the alimony properly. Ken, I'm severing our ties as parent and child. However, until you finish paying the $1.06 million, I will be watching. That's the least I can do to atone to Kelly. My father-in-law's words were as cold as ice. Yet, understanding he was thinking of me warmed my heart. My husband and mother-in-law again knelt before my father-in-law, repeatedly apologizing. But my father-in-law just shook his head. You're apologizing to the wrong person. You should be apologizing to Kelly first. Finally, my husband and mother-in-law apologized to me. Seeing everyone around us having kids and being bragged about, I started wanting a child too. I didn't mean any harm, I'm really sorry. Let's try again, I won't talk about wanting children anymore. I just wanted to see Ken's children. I didn't hate Kelly personally, I just wanted grandchildren. Forgive me. Even as apologies, their words, filled with excuses, resonated nothing with me. I couldn't keep silent anymore. I wanted children just as much as you, if not more. But I can't have them, and you knew that when you asked me to marry you, didn't you? Traitor. Mother-in-law, please think again. There are many people in the world who want children but can't have them. I will never accept the idea that it's a wife's duty to bear children. I can't forgive people like you. I firmly pushed away my husband and mother-in-law, demanding a divorce and the repayment of debt and alimony. While my husband and mother-in-law were still trying to say something, my father-in-law and I left the house that was supposed to be our new home. After that, my father-in-law's divorce was successfully finalized. He apologized to me again and promised to make my husband and mother-in-law pay. After the divorce, as promised, my father-in-law monitored them, and they both had to work to pay off their debts and alimony. Ken owed $1.06 million, and my mother-in-law was desperate to pay alimony to my father-in-law, but eventually, she couldn't take it anymore and ran away. Running away was one thing, but after that, their lives took a turn for the worse, and both hit rock bottom. Eventually, my husband and mother-in-law lost everything. I am grateful to my father-in-law, who went to great lengths for me, and I decided to start a new life. While I am estranged from my husband and mother-in-law, I still keep in touch with my father-in-law occasionally. Fortunately, I found a good match and remarried. With the support of my new husband, I decided to undergo fertility treatment. A few years later, I was blessed with the child I had longed for and am now happy. Isn't the baby adorable? Yeah, looks just like you. Excuse me? My sister, Jessica, has always been quite the looker in our hometown. She played sports and was always the tomboyish type, running around the playground with the boys, sporting a short haircut. Compared to me, she had fair skin and was delicate, looking lovely in a white summer dress. That's why every boyfriend I ever brought home during my school days ended up having a crush on Jessica. It wasn't Jessica's fault, it was mine for not being captivating enough. While it got me down, it also pushed me to better myself. Finally, when I managed to marry, my husband, George, didn't really give any special reactions upon seeing Jessica. That's why I believed he was different. I thought I could trust him. But betraying me? Unforgivable. Furious, my actions led to both of them losing everything, plummeting into a world of misery. My name is Natalie, 33 years old. I married George, who's 2 years older, 3 years ago, and we've been living together since. Growing up, my dream was to become a homemaker once I got married. However, after graduating from college, I joined a company where I was surrounded by supportive bosses, kind seniors, and cute juniors. The environment was so welcoming and the job was rewarding, so even after marriage, I've been working full-time. George was very supportive of me working, saying, "Let's both do the house chores whenever we can." He was very cooperative at the beginning of our marriage. At least, he was, at the beginning. George had always lived with his parents before our marriage. He had never lived alone, so he basically had zero housekeeping skills. He'd knock over the trash can when vacuuming, put too much detergent in the washing machine, and broke more dishes than he cleaned. And cooking? His knife skills were so bad that it was painful to watch. At first, I would teach him where we do chores together. But because I also had my job, Things would take longer when he did them, so I often ended up doing them myself. Every time, George would give me an apologetic look and say, "I'm sorry, thanks." But at some point, that became the norm. Cleaning, laundry, dishwashing, cooking, they all became my tasks, and all George did was take out the trash. And even then, I was the one tying up the garbage bags. I too have a full-time job, and sometimes I'm too swamped to handle all the chores. But whenever I'd ask George for help, he'd make a face. "It's faster if you do it. But you could at least help with the laundry, right?" I'd retort. Today, like every other day after a full day of work, I returned home to find George lounging on the sofa, watching TV. Our work hours aren't much different, but George's workplace is closer to our house, so he usually gets home first. The laundry I did in the morning was still in the dryer, and the dishes from breakfast were still in the sink. I hadn't had the time to do the dishes before leaving for work, and George didn't seem to have noticed. I started by cleaning up the dishes and then preparing dinner. All the while, George just watched TV. So when I asked him to help with the laundry, he seemed hesitant. "It's just folding the laundry," I said. "He just can't do that simple thing. Or rather, he probably doesn't want to do it because it's a hassle." He replied, "Well, I don't know how you like things folded. It doesn't matter. As long as they fit in the dresser. I don't really have a preference. Well, work was super busy today, and I'm really tired. Usually, I'd be okay, but today's just not the day." "It's fine, I'll do it." "Yeah. It's probably faster that way." Saying that, he went back to watching TV. I'm tired too from my job. Moreover, George doesn't even say "I'm sorry" or "thank you" anymore. What happened to our initial agreement to divide the household chores evenly? Even if the burden has become heavier on me, is it too much to ask for a simple thank you? I sighed softly, continuing to prepare dinner without emotion. It seems like George's attitude is getting worse day by day. It's now given that he doesn't do chores, and he's increasingly going out alone on his days off. "Don't you think we should spend some quality time together, just the two of us?" I'd suggest. But his responses were always along the lines of, "I've got golf with my boss that day." Or, "A colleague wants some advice about work. So I need to go." He always seems to have some plans. At 35, George, with no particular high-ranking position, honestly, doesn't earn a great salary. I once accidentally saw his paycheck, and it was much lower than mine. But the fact that he's often invited out by his superiors and colleagues probably means he's well liked at work. I know very well that connections and relationships are crucial in one's career. So when he cites that as a reason, it's hard to ask him to prioritize me. I also didn't have the courage to quit my job and become a full-time housewife. Before we knew it, 3 years had passed since our wedding. I've always wanted to start a family soon after getting married. My feelings haven't changed, and I've brought up the idea of having children with George several times. However, he always said he wanted to cherish our time together more and wasn't very keen on the idea of starting a family just yet. While I understood and respected his sentiments, it hurt that he'd spend his free days away from me. I tried approaching the topic again, wanting a child sooner rather than later, but George gave vague and non-committal responses. I started to wonder if he's not really fond of kids. The thought made me feel down. At times like this, a change of scenery helps. Thinking of maybe catching a movie, a message notification from Jessica, my older sister by 2 years, popped up. She wanted to meet and chat. Meeting her after so long seemed refreshing, so I quickly agreed, and we decided to meet up at a diner near the station the next day. Jessica arrived a bit later than planned, apologizing as she took the seat opposite me. "It's been a while. How've you been?" "I'm good, how about you?" "I'm doing well too." With a smile, Jessica said, "Sorry for calling you out so suddenly." "It's okay. I'm happy to see you after so long." "There's something I wanted to tell you, Natalie." "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." "What?" I exclaimed louder than I intended, remembering only after that we were in a public place. I quickly covered my mouth with both hands. Seeing my reaction, Jessica laughed. "You're too surprised." "But, Jess, I didn't even know you had a boyfriend," I mumbled. With a slightly troubled look, Jessica replied, "Actually, we're not married yet." "What?" "He's got some complications." Jessica looked down with a saddened expression. Jessica had always been the beauty of our hometown, famous enough to be recognized by many. As a kid, she was the active type, playing sports and running around with the boys in the park. Compared to me, she was fair-skinned and delicate, looking like a girl who'd look pretty in a white dress. Now, she hops between various temporary jobs. She'd always joke about not wanting to be a permanent employee because office romances always messed up her relationships. Maybe that was the issue here. "You're happy about the baby, right?" I hesitated before asking. Jessica smiled, nodding. "Of course." Whatever the situation, it seemed she'd made up her mind to be a single mom. "Natalie, will you support me?" No matter the circumstances, if Jessica wants that child, there's only one thing to say. "Of course, congratulations." With that said and a smile, Jessica gave a relieved grin. "It'd be great if you, Natalie, could have a baby soon too." I couldn't bring myself to tell the blissful Jessica that I was currently having doubts about that very matter. I just gave a vague smile and responded, "Yeah, maybe." That day, as soon as I got home, I told George about Jessica. "My sister, she's pregnant." "Wow, really? Guess we'll have to bring a gift when the baby's born." I had intended to share the news as something significant, but George's reaction was much more indifferent than I expected. Even though George knew Jessica wasn't married yet, he didn't seem to show any interest or ask any questions. Or maybe he just isn't interested in kids? I couldn't consult with Jessica, and my feelings of unease only grew. Time passed, and I received a message from Jessica saying she had safely given birth. When I told George, all he said was a simple "Oh, really?" Maybe if he actually sees the baby, he might want one of our own. With that thought, I suggested visiting Jessica in the hospital. "She's going to be in the hospital for a while, and I really want to see the baby's face soon, plus we should bring a baby gift." "All right, I'm free this Saturday. I can come." "Really? I'll let Jessica know." And with Jessica's approval, George and I planned to visit her with a baby gift the following Saturday. The next day, wondering what would make a good baby gift, I tried to search on my phone, but the battery had just died. I had left my computer at work, so I had no choice but to use George's. Heading into the bedroom where it was, I thought about letting George know, but he seemed to be napping on the couch while watching TV. It's just a quick search, I thought, and continued to the bedroom. Upon starting up the computer, something astonishing caught my eye. Maybe it was set to start automatically, but without me touching anything, an email folder was open. And it contained a recent conversation. All with Jessica. What? Why? It made sense that George, being my sister's brother-in-law, would have some interactions with Jessica. They probably communicated sometimes, but what could they be discussing this frequently? Curious, I clicked on the most recent conversation. "Congratulations on the birth. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there. So I'm finally a dad, huh? Thank you. It came out easier than I thought. Can't wait to introduce him to his father." What is this? It was unbelievable. I couldn't understand. He apologized for not being able to be there. Is he the father? This implied that the child Jessica gave birth to might be George's. In a frenzy, I looked through their past emails. "What did you tell her today? That's just mean." This was from the day Jessica told me about her pregnancy. "I'm pregnant. Probably from the last time we met. I'm super thrilled." And this seemed to be from when Jessica found out about the pregnancy. "I'll be over there today. Told Natalie I'm playing golf with my boss." "Okay, wanna try that restaurant we talked about?" The further back I went, the more it looked like a conversation that couldn't possibly be between a sister's husband and her brother-in-law. It seemed their relationship started right after George and I got married. I felt a mixture of anger and despair as my hands trembled. I can't believe it. Trying hard to shake my shocked brain, I think about what needs to be done next. Then, I made sure to put George's computer back the way it was so he wouldn't find out I touched it. When I returned to the living room, George was soundly snoring, asleep without a care in the world. I clenched my fist tightly. "I'll never forgive you," I whispered quietly, formulating a plan. Then on Saturday, George and I went to the hospital where Jessica was admitted. Jessica seemed quite well. "Ah, you didn't expect him to be out and about so soon," I wanted to say, but trying to put on a smile even though I'm a bit annoyed. On Jessica's arm, a newborn baby slept peacefully. The baby was innocent. That's why, even in its cuteness, I shot George a scornful look. I could feel my blood boil as George looked at the baby with joy. "The baby is so cute," George murmured affectionately. "Yeah, looks just like you," I replied. George and Jessica froze. I smirked with a sly grin. Then, seeing their reaction to my words, both of their faces drained of color. "You thought I didn't know?" Jessica played dumb, tilting her head and asking, "What are you talking about?" "That you two are having an affair. And who the real father of this baby is." George raised his voice. "What the hell are you saying? Jessica just gave birth. Don't make wild accusations." "It's not an accusation. I have all the evidence," I said, handing George an envelope as if throwing it at him. Surprised, he took it and checked the contents. It contained excerpts from emails between him and Jessica, hinting at their relationship. I copied the data from George's computer to mine and read everything. "You went through my computer?" he shouted. "I wanted to see what gift to give Jessica. There wasn't even a password, and your email app popped right up," I said. Upon hearing about George's careless security, Jessica clicked her tongue in disbelief. According to the emails, it all began when George came to my family's house to announce our marriage plans. Of course, he met Jessica there and fell head over heels for her. But George, being on the brink of marrying me, couldn't do anything about his feelings. So, he went ahead and married me, but his feelings for Jessica never faded. Surprisingly, Jessica later joined George's company as a temp worker. Though she was only there for 6 months, it was more than enough time for their relationship to deepen. He'd make excuses like, "I have a golf game with my boss," or, "A coworker needs work advice and I need to go." But in reality, he was meeting Jessica. Eventually, they crossed a line. "I didn't want to," Jessica said. "But George forced me." As I summarized what I learned from the emails, Jessica's face turned into that of a victim. "But the child is innocent, so I decided to keep it," she added. "Why are you making things up? Wasn't it you who seduced me?" George shouted. "It's not like that. Right, Natalie? You believe me, don't you?" Jessica looked at me desperately. I replied flatly, "Why would I?" In our college days, I often consulted with Jessica about my relationships. Every time I got a boyfriend, Jessica was genuinely happy for me, but they never lasted long. That's because whenever I introduced a boyfriend to Jessica, he'd inevitably fall for her. I fell for Jessica, so having someone tell me up front that they wanted to break up with me because of her was one of the better scenarios. There were even those who tried to get close to Jessica by using me as a stepping stone. Each time that happened, Jessica would look apologetically at me, but it wasn't her fault. It made me wonder if I lacked charm or if I needed to make others fall for me so much that they wouldn't be tempted by Jessica. That's when I met George. Even after George met Jessica, all he said was, "She's a pretty lady." His attitude towards me didn't change at all. That's why I married George. I thought he'd only have eyes for me and wouldn't be swayed by Jessica. But the reality was, He just hadn't encountered Jessica until we were too deep into the relationship, so we ended up getting married. It's like nothing had changed since our college days. Actually, back in college, I could trust in Jessica's kindness, so I might have been happier then. You purposefully stole my boyfriends, didn't you? No, I didn't. It's all here. I showed her the printed out copies of their email exchanges. I've always stolen Natalie's boyfriends. That's such a nasty habit. Then Natalie comes to me for relationship advice. Comforting her really boosts my ego, I can't stop. That was the truth. Jessica would steal my boyfriends on purpose and comfort me when I was down, all to boost her self-esteem. I thought she was a supportive big sister. I believed she was a kind sister I could share highs and lows with. And then I handed George the lawyer's business card. Hold on. I expect the division of property. Jessica, I've told everything to our parents. They're going to disown you. Wait a minute. They won't see their grandchild then. Even if Natalie and George break up, who's gonna want a plain divorcee like you? They both prioritize me. They told me not to worry. Seems they don't want to see the face of their disgraceful daughter more than their grandchild's right now. Jessica gritted her teeth at my words. Then she turned to George. Hey, you're the father of this child. You'll pay child support, right? That was the deal from the beginning. George remained silent. Given his modest salary, he couldn't possibly afford to divide the property with me and also child support. He probably thought he wouldn't get caught and was relying on my salary for living expenses. But now, with the double punch of the division and child support, he was in a tight spot. No wonder he stays silent. From now on, we'll communicate through our lawyers. This is ridiculous. As I tried to leave, George began tearing up the printed emails. Of course, I still had the data on my computer and had already provided it as evidence to my lawyer. They're probably verifying the authenticity of those emails right now. But judging by their reactions, it doesn't seem like it's some kind of fake email or scam. I eventually divorced George and moved back to my parents. Seeing me, both of them were in tears. For them, Jessica was their beloved daughter as well. And of course, she was a sister I loved dearly. I never thought she'd play me like that. My parents disowned Jessica. She tried to rely on them using her child as leverage, but they never gave in. It seems like Jessica and George didn't end up together. When I caught them, Jessica tried to shift all the blame on George, and he couldn't accept that. In the end, Jessica couldn't raise the baby alone and had to place it in a temporary care facility. Rumors circulated at the office that George was having an affair with Jessica, his wife's sister. Feeling uncomfortable, he reportedly resigned from his position. He's tried to reconcile a few times, saying he's sorry, but there's no way I would accept it. I had to get a restraining order through the police. Now, I won't have to see George's face ever again. Meanwhile, I've become even more dedicated to my job than before. People were quite concerned about me at first, but I seem to have gotten over it and have been working hard. Looking at me, it seems the morale in the office has also improved, and sales have apparently skyrocketed. I think I've had enough of marriage, but it's not the only thing that brings happiness. I have a rewarding job, a trustworthy boss, dependable colleagues, and loving parents. Right now, I feel more than fulfilled. I hope the days continue to be this calm and peaceful. A few days after my husband William was promoted to supervisor, Michelle, my mother-in-law, came over to celebrate. I looked around the dining room table, puzzled. I couldn't find the gift I had left there the previous evening. Hey, do you know where the package I left on the table last night is? Wearing his casual clothes and back in the living room, William replied with a smug smirk. That cheap thing you gave me? I threw it out. I stared at him in shock. It was in a Macy's bag. A custom-made shirt with initials and such. Too outdated for my taste. I responded with a faint smile. So, you've always felt this way, huh? For Valentine's Day and birthdays, I'd go all the way to the department store and pick out stylish socks and handkerchiefs for him. But William would accept them with a nonchalant face and wouldn't even thank me. Too bad, that gift wasn't from me. I can't wait to see the storm that's coming. You're gonna pay for all the times you've looked down on me. I am Carol, a 38-year-old housewife. I married William 2 years ago and have been working part-time since our marriage. I met William, who was working in the parent company of my previous job, through our respective bosses, and we started dating. Many of our friends and colleagues were getting married, and I was feeling the pressure, so I was grateful to my boss for introducing us. I was drawn to William's confident and cheerful personality, believing that I can build a wonderful family with him. So, I happily accepted his proposal a year later. But shortly after our wedding, William began showing his arrogant true colors. The first red flag was his grumpy remark right after we returned from our honeymoon. "When are you gonna quit your job?" "What do you mean?" "We can live on my salary, can't we? Just quit your job." I was dumbfounded. It's not like we can rely solely on a husband's salary anymore. We might want kids someday, so I want to save up now. "Well, I'll allow you to work, but switch to part-time." "What if household chores are neglected?" "We're both working, so it's only natural for us to share the chores, right?" With that, William scoffed. "Come on now, you earn less than me and yet you are trying to boss me around. That's ridiculous, right? My mom always kept our house spotless and was entirely devoted to my late dad." "Well, that's expected from a wife, I guess." "Oh, I can take out the trash if you want." It seems that his mother was a stay-at-home wife, and his father was a typical domineering husband. It's a bit much to expect that in this day and age. Arguing about it seemed so silly, so I just sighed and let it go. First, I asked my job to change from a full-time position to a part-time role ending at 3 p.m. After a few conversations, he'll probably understand. That's what I thought, but I was soon crushed by reality. William just wouldn't listen, and his condescending attitude only got worse. The thing that really got to me was his complaints about the food. He can't even prepare breakfast by himself, yet he was so picky. On a day when I was bedridden with a high fever, he came up to me and said, "What's for lunch?" Half asleep, I struggled to open my eyes and whispered with a raspy voice, "Sorry, I can't get up and cook right now." "Just whip up something simple, like pasta or something." "Pasta? Simple?" I wanted to argue back, but I didn't have the energy, so I weakly said, "Just have some cup noodles." If you can't even prepare lunch, you're failing as a wife. Take better care of yourself. William didn't show any concern for me and just ate his noodles with a displeased look. Out of options, I warmed up some instant porridge and ate it. But then, a month later, when he caught a cold and was bedridden, he made a fuss, blaming it on me, made me prepare porridge, and expected me to care for him all night. When I mentioned that I had work the next day and couldn't, he got mad, saying, "What a cold wife! Don't you have any sympathy for your sick husband? Can't you see how much pain I'm in? Show some concern." To make matters worse, William had me prepare lunch for him every day, claiming that eating out was too expensive. He never showed any gratitude, just gave me a list of strict rules. I couldn't use leftovers from the previous night's dinner or frozen foods. Everything had to be made fresh. He insisted on a menu of vegetable soup, some egg dishes, fruit, toast, and coffee for breakfast. The fruit and egg dishes had to be different every day. Soon, I found myself constantly thinking about lunch ingredients and meal menus even at work, and my spirits were increasingly dampened. However, getting divorced right after getting married would be unfair to my boss, who had introduced us. I found it hard to vent to my friends and, with my parents having passed away, I had no one to turn to. Alone, I stewed in my own troubles. Despite all this, I continued to try and get along with my husband. For our anniversary, I made William's favorite meatloaf and waited up for him till late in the night. He got called away on an unexpected business trip and didn't return until the next day, but I didn't let that get me down. On Valentine's Day, I bought him a stylish t-shirt from the department store. He didn't react when I gave it to him, and it seems like it just ended up at the bottom of his dresser. However, in early March, I received a text from William during his work break, complete with a photo. My heart nearly stopped when I checked the message. Gonna head to Amanda's place now. Looking forward to the celebration gift. Keep those wine glasses I gave you the other day ready. I was staring in disbelief at my phone when another message came through. Not gonna let you sleep tonight. Ugh, I don't want to go back to my house. Was this what they call a misdirected message? This was undeniable proof of his infidelity. Even though I felt our love had long since faded, tears welled up in my eyes from the mix of profound sadness and raging anger, making me feel dizzy. I took a deep breath to calm myself and quickly took a screenshot before William could realize his mistake and delete the message. After that, even watching a comedy show couldn't distract me, so I took a shower to try and clear my head. As I was drying my hair, William came home. I looked into the living room to find him sprawled out on the couch, snoring, his face red. The scent of alcohol mixed with body soap was nauseating. I stumbled and fell near the couch. I noticed a high-end shopping bag. A shirt, maybe? Alongside a ribbon-tied square package, a floral card lay scattered on the floor. I picked them up and returned them to the bag. Then, I took note of the message. Congrats on your promotion, William. Being a manager at such a big company is impressive. Looking forward to our weekend date in San Francisco. I smirked. William's company is a small business. I wonder which company he's been claiming to work for. On top of that, after he finally got promoted to supervisor, he's such a show-off, lying about being a manager. I can't believe he'd ask me to return something for his mistress just to save a few bucks on delivery. I glared at William's sleeping face, his mouth slack and drooling. A week after William's promotion, on a public holiday, both William and I had the day off. I intended to sleep in, but ended up waking up earlier than usual. When I got up to use the bathroom, I sensed someone on the first floor. Going down, I found Michelle in the kitchen wearing an apron. Seeing me, Michelle, who was tying twine around chunks of beef and pork, frowned. Finally awake? For a housewife, you sure sleep in a lot. Michelle, it's only 5 a.m. While yawning, I saw Michelle preparing the meal and asked, "What brings you here today?" Using her own set of keys to get in. It's obviously to celebrate William's promotion. I heard he's gonna be out of town this weekend, so I moved it to today. I muttered to myself while looking at Michelle's beaming face. It's not a business trip, but rather an overnight rendezvous with his mistress. Still, why is she cooking meat so early in the morning? Is she planning on preparing a feast all day? I had a bad feeling but didn't ask any further questions. I changed into my casual clothes and started doing the laundry. So much for a day off, a nap seems unlikely now. After a while, the delicious smell of roasted meat wafted from the kitchen. I love roast beef and barbecued pork, but I can't imagine eating it this early. Michelle, humming along to a tune, left dishes in the sink and started making a salad. I began preparing breakfast next to her. After a while, Michelle, growing impatient with her son who showed no sign of waking, turned to ask me, "Carol, what time does William usually wake up?" On his days off, he usually sleeps until about 10 a.m. He must be tired from working every day. Well, that's all right. The party is tonight after all. By the way, Carol, you off from work today? I'm off today too. Oh, really? Michelle, with an obviously annoyed look, glanced at me. Even after preparing the meal, she didn't bother cleaning up. She plopped down on the sofa and started watching a TV show as if she was at her own home. After a while, William, who had just woken up, entered the living room. He looked shocked to see Michelle acting as if she owned the place. "Mom, why are you here?" "Good morning, William. I came over for a surprise promotion party tonight. Being a manager at such a big company, I can boast about it to the neighbors." "Oh, thanks." Looking slightly embarrassed, William gave me a quick glance and headed for the bathroom. I was taken aback to realize that even his parents had been fed false information. Suddenly, I noticed something missing from the dining table. The promotion gift I left out last night is nowhere to be found. Hey, do you know where the gift I left on the table last night is? When I asked William, who had just come back from the bathroom, he gave a mischievous smile. That cheap thing? I threw it away. I opened my eyes wide. The one in the Macy's bag? A custom-made shirt with initials? Too tacky. I'd never wear it. I chuckled. So, you've always felt this way. Every anniversary, I would head to the mall and pick out fashionable socks or handkerchiefs for him. But William would always take them for granted and never thanked me. It's a shame. That wasn't a gift from me. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of scene unfolds. You're gonna pay for all the times you've made fun of me. Hearing my stern words, William looked puzzled. You checked the contents? Yeah. That was a gift from your mother. She sent it by courier, and I left it on the table. I messaged you about it last night, didn't you see? William's face stiffened. He quickly grabbed his phone, checked his messages, and went pale. On the sofa, Michelle, who was munching on a cookie, crushed the cookie in her hand and slowly stood up. I told you the other day that I'd just treat you this year, remember? I caught a glimpse of what looked like a really nice shirt. You came home pretty drunk last night, so you didn't really get a good look at it. William's mouth dropped open as he looked at Michelle. Michelle, with a hint of anger, flashed a smile. I even added a handwritten card. William, you just throw away gifts from others without a second thought. Mom's really disappointed. Sorry, I'll pick it up right now. Wait. As William rummaged through the kitchen trash can, Michelle's sharp voice shot at him. I just took it to the dump. William checked the wall clock and was shocked. He had missed the collection time by 30 minutes. The burnable trash had probably been collected already. William rushed to Michelle, got on his knees, and begged for forgiveness. I'm so sorry. I wouldn't have thrown it out if I knew it was from you, Mom. Even if it was from Carol, throwing it away without even using it once? That's really something. Michelle scolded William in a frustrated tone. She came from a generation that valued thriftiness, keeping things like wedding favors. Probably couldn't stand seeing things thrown away so hastily without even using them. William, having thoroughly upset his mother, seemed to shrink in guilt. It's hard for him in moments like this, especially since they usually get along so well. It would be a waste not to take advantage of the situation. With a clearly upset look on her face, Michelle began to pack up. I raised my voice and said to her, Michelle, there's nothing we can do about it. It seems he was really busy last night. For about a year now, he suddenly started having lots of overtime and business trips. Even though his salary didn't change, when I sarcastically mentioned it, William glanced at me with a side eye, breaking out in a cold sweat. Does she know I'm having an affair? No, I can't be sure yet. If I can keep it hidden, I'm gonna do just that. Seemingly torn inside, William managed a half smile and began to awkwardly explain. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I'm busier at work, but the pay remains the same. It feels like I'm working for some shady company. I get so frustrated. Heck, I barely have time to check my cell. By the way, Michelle, William sent me this message the other day. I was so shocked, I cried. I showed Michelle my phone. It was a message William had mistakenly sent to me a few days ago. Michelle's eyes widened. William, are you having an affair? Staring at the phone Michelle was holding out, William's eyes bulged. What the heck is this? That's my line. You mistakenly sent your lovey-dovey exchange with her to me. The wine glasses, those are the ones you had me order online, right? Yes, they are. I can't believe it. Making your wife buy a gift for your mistress? What were you thinking? You're not just making a fool out of me, but her as well. Give me a break. The shipping cost was $2.50. As long as she doesn't find out, it's fine. I paid you back for the glasses, what's your problem? Acting like it was the most natural thing in the world, William became defiant. So, that was the reason. What a penny-pinching man. You're stingy, yet you want to have an affair. If you were gonna cheat just 2 years into our marriage, why did you even marry me? Challenged with this question, William smirked. I chose you 'cause you seemed like you'd just follow my lead, didn't matter who it was. What the heck, that's terrible. But once we got married, I just got bored with plain ol' you real quick. Women gotta be young and pretty, you know. I was so taken aback by William's audacity that I couldn't find words. You've been cheating for over 6 months now, haven't ya? It started when a coworker invited you to that strip club. Suddenly, you had all these business trips and worked weekends and overtime. I knew something was off. You're so naive. I just told you that and you believed me. I threw out all the lunches you made for my weekend shifts. Eating your lunch on dates with Amanda would have been rude. I was speechless. Despite him saying he liked homemade, I woke up at 5 a.m. even on weekends to make elaborate lunches for him, and now to hear he'd just thrown them away. Michelle looked on, silently crossing her arms and frowning deeply. Furious, I pressed William even further. So, your weekend business trip to San Francisco was really a secret getaway, wasn't it? Don't bother playing dumb, I asked the detective agency to investigate. I took out documents and photos from a large envelope and spread them out on the table. There they were, clear as day, photos of him arm in arm with a woman at tourist spots, kissing, even going into a hotel. You didn't think you'd get photographed, did you? He grimaced for a moment but quickly shrugged it off. Boldly, he searched his phone for a photo to show to me and Michelle. Yeah, she's a stripper, a whole decade younger. Look, Mom. Ain't she cute? Michelle glared fiercely at the gleeful William. He recoiled as Michelle slapped the phone from his hand, and he stared, mouth agape. What the hell, Mom? You cracked the screen. Shut up! I was absolutely stunned to see Michelle yelling at William with such a furious expression. Michelle, with a furious look I had never seen before, yelled at William. It looked like she was about to lunge at him. Michelle trembled and scolded William in a shrill voice. William, aren't you ashamed of having an affair with a young woman? I thought you were the one person who wouldn't do such a thing. But Mom, you don't like Carol, right? Don't get mad just because I've got another woman on the side. Michelle was furious with William's flippant attitude. This is different. Don't you remember? Your father had an affair with a woman from a bar, and they even had a child. That caused a huge scandal. Do you know how much I cried back then? William touched his mouth with a regretful expression. Knowing this story from a previous conversation with William, I thought Michelle might take my side. My hunch was right, and to seal the deal, I pulled out William's paycheck from the drawer and spread it in front of William and Michelle. Come on, Michelle, don't be too hard on him. William's been working hard and look how much he's earning. The moment I put it on the table, William snatched it up and stuffed his paycheck into his pants pocket. Michelle looked puzzled. Oh, William, isn't the pay a bit low for working at the headquarters? No, it's Kanata Industries. Michelle blinked. What's that? I've never heard of that company. Wait a minute, when did you switch jobs? Avoiding Michelle's gaze, William tried to explain. I quit the company I joined right after college within a month. The pay was good, but the boss was scary. He got super mad when I overslept like 3 times. It's fine, right? I'm working properly. Yes, Michelle, he even got promoted to section chief. With a smile, I spilled the beans, and William glared at me. Hey, don't say unnecessary things. Weren't you a department manager? Well, I'll become one eventually. Michelle exploded with anger at William's casual brushing off, who was scratching his head and laughing. Enough is enough! She shouted, pounding the table. What's the matter, Mom? It's not worth getting angry over. You, always having affairs, lying. You don't seem to be remorseful at all. What are you planning to do in the future, William? I'm not planning anything in particular. William, fluttering his eyelids, spoke to me with a smirk. Carol, you're not gonna divorce me over a mere affair, right? Of course, I'm gonna keep seeing Amanda. I'll make sure to give you the money. You wouldn't be able to survive without me, right? He's way too selfish. I was beyond angry with William's words, just completely flabbergasted. It looked like Michelle felt the same, left speechless. If you don't want a divorce, turn a blind eye to my affairs, and keep taking care of me like you always have. After all, I'm the one providing for you. Got it? With his arms crossed, William smugly leaned back. I sighed deeply. I can't live with you anymore. Let's get a divorce. I can do just fine without you. I spread out my paycheck on the kitchen table that I had prepared. I also showed my bank app. Michelle peeked in from the side. Oh, you earn more than William, don't you? William turned pale. No way, that can't be right. I had you switch to part-time so you'd earn less than me. Staring at the notification in disbelief, William's voice trembled. What's this $2,000 transfer? Are you into some shady business? I started some computer work from home when I had free time. I'm finally earning well now. With my part-time job added, I earn more than you in a month. I smiled coldly at William. You can't just spend our shared money on your mistress. You've spent around $10,000, haven't you? Just let it go. Consider it payback for everything I've done for you. William looked away, arrogantly dismissing the concern. It's ridiculous to make a fuss over one affair. And to complain about spending a little money is petty. I mean, if you earn more than me, you should be the one working. I'll quit my job. You handle both work and housework. Serve me better, like Mom did for Dad when he was alive. Laughing heartily, Michelle gave William a cold glare. I can't deal with you anymore, William. Let's cut ties as a family. Wait, Mom, why? Do you think I served your dad out of love? I'm done with you. Whether you want to get a divorce or keep having affairs, do whatever you want. Michelle quickly gathered her things and headed for the front door. Stunned, I handed William the divorce papers. Don't mess with me. Why should I stay with you when I earn more? Expect a call from my lawyer tomorrow. We'll decide the compensation amount for your verbal abuse through him. Hey, don't decide things on your own. Leave my stuff here until the movers come to pick it up. If you throw anything away, I'll sue. I firmly declared and then left the room. Hey, you're joking, right? With a smirk, I silently turned away from William, who tried to stop me, and left our home. William resisted the divorce, but after being advised by a lawyer that going to court would cost more, he reluctantly agreed. The abusive language I had recorded on my phone served as evidence, and William had to pay me compensation. Moreover, he also had to compensate for spending over $10,000 from our shared savings, which seemed to drain his account. It became known at his company that we had divorced. To make matters worse, a colleague who accompanied him to the nightclub spilled the beans about the cause of our divorce, and rumors spread that he had gotten his mistress pregnant and even that he had been physically abusive to me. His boss, who made a speech at our wedding, was furious at the embarrassment and rescinded William's promotion, transferring him to the countryside instead. William sold our house and is moving to a remote area soon. According to neighbors, Michelle truly cut ties with William, tired of his insincerity. A friend said they recently saw William at the train station and were shocked by his pale, thin appearance. William, who had always relied on me for housework, must be struggling both mentally and at work, unable to rely on his mother and facing a tough environment at his office. I imagine his colleagues at the new subsidiary would know why he was transferred, and he'd be seen with skepticism. As for his mistress, after learning William's true position from a colleague, she quickly dumped him. He got what he deserved. After the divorce, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders and realized just how much I had endured. Despite my efforts, he never recognized them and always demanded more, treating me like a maid. I felt guilty about divorcing because my boss had introduced us. It seemed like I wasn't patient enough if I quickly wanted a divorce. I hoped one day he'd understand. But I had gotten used to suppressing my own feelings, thinking that way. Now that I'm single again, I feel free and refreshed. The urgency I felt to get married, have children, or not be alone in my old age has faded after the failed marriage. For now, I'm going to take a break from dating and enjoy my single life.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie. making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.